Hey, what's up guys, it's Apollo Uchiha here, back with the next part of What If Naruto Was Reunited with His Family. Now before continuing this, if you haven't, then please do leave a like and subscribe to my channel if you like the content of this channel. And without further ado, let's continue with our story. Drowning, Fu struggled to her feet, feeling lucky that none of the trees Gaara had demolished fell on her. Well, I'm not the luckiest Biju for nothing, Fu. This is not the time, Chaume. Looking around, Fu didn't see Gaara. He must have sent her flying further than she expected, but she could have definitely feel him coming. With that in mind, she took to the skies and flew in the opposite direction. She wasn't running away. She refused to leave a rampaging Jinchuriki that she set off to come across any poor unsuspecting genin in the forest. What she was doing though was giving herself some time to catch her breath after having it so thoroughly knocked out of her. She had to give Gaara's props for being the Jinchuriki of Ichibi. He still packed a hell of a punch. You shouldn't underestimate any of my kinfu, Chaume scolded. Despite being the weakest of us, Shikaku is still a force to be reckoned with, as is his vassal. Sighed Fu, hummed her agreement, and made it a mental note to take everything about Gaara seriously from now on. She now knew she didn't have the luxury to do otherwise. Link break. Naruto's conglomeration of chains ran through Orochimaru's body with a crunch that sliced the clearing. Sasuke and Sakura looked his way in jaw-hanging astonishment. It was slightly different from what they learned, but they knew exactly what that jutsu was. Now, they just wondered one thing: how did Naruto learn it? For just a moment, naivety set in for the young Uzumaki as he thought himself successful until he felt the hair on the back of his neck stand. He whipped around with his kunai at the ready and sliced at an incoming snake from head to tail. Before he leapt back, his eyes glanced down at the Orochimaru he killed, only to find a log. Kamirami, thought Naruto, I should have known better. You know the Harishin, or some variant of it at least. For one so young, that is quite interesting. You piqued my interest, Naruto-kun, and my curiosity. The way Orochimaru said his name sent shiver down Naruto's spine. I've decided. You, Sasuke-kun, and that young Kusako no Ichi all have such curious abilities. I must have you all. As for the pink-haired child, well, considering that Konoha won't be standing for too much long anyway, it shouldn't be matter when one of their genin ends up dead. Don't you all agree? He said with a sadistic smile spreading across his lips. Naruto was about to have any of that. Spawning 4 more bunshins, they rushed for the Sanin as Naruto spoke. I'll kill you before I ever let that happen. Your bravado truly knows no boundary, Orochimaru replied as he merely catched the clone's approach. I'll have to work that out of you thoroughly. 2 of the clones took the lead as one slid low, the other one jumping for a flying kick at the Sanin's face. Orochimaru jumped over the sliding kick as he blocked the flying one with his arm. Bringing his feet down, he aimed to stomp the bunshins below him out of existence, only for its arm to shoot upward, spreading Orochimaru's legs fluently to avoid being popped as it continued the slide through his limbs. Now behind the Sanin, it shot to its feet, aiming for a blow to the spine as the clone that had gone for the flying kick used Orochimaru's arm to flip over him and aim for his neck. As this happened, a third clone shot forward as well, stopping in front of Orochimaru abruptly and forcefully, driving its foot into the ground before striking out with 2 fists aimed at the Sanin's chest. Slightly impressed, Orochimaru finally realized where he'd seen moves like this. Smiling to himself, the Sanin blocked the 2 attacks at his back, and with his elbow as the sword of Kusanagi freed itself from his throat and stabbed thoroughly the bunshin at his front. Swiftly, Orochimaru whipped around within it and sliced through the clone in the air, giving the clone at ground level just enough time to deliver an open-palmed strike at Orochimaru's abdomen. Hardly feeling the blow, Orochimaru's arm shot out, and the bunshin popped sooner after. Whipping back around, his eyes caught sight of 2 white flashes. In a flash, one of the remaining Narutos was at his back, as another appeared from above. The Naruto at Orochimaru's back went from the same twin fist strike as one of the bunshins that had come before him, as the Naruto from above used a stream of chains from his body to wrap around the Sanin's limbs. You see, the twin strike hit hard, breaking Orochimaru's spine immediately. Then Naruto realized something was wrong. There's no way a Sanin would actually be hurt from the technique of a genin. even when Naruto considered the fact that he'd been using one of the Kosen Dekai Yoshiko techniques, which were meant to break bones. He doubted a shinobi of Orochimaru's caliber would be affected by it, when Genin was the one who performed it. And he was right. The Orochimaru that Naruto attacked turned to mud, and the earth broke beneath the Naruto on the ground. Orochimaru's arm shot up and took hold of his legs. With a tug, he pulled the Naruto below to the surface, up to his head, before exiting the earth himself. With a curse, the Naruto in the mid-air made a hand sign, causing the explosive notes on his punching to go off. The explosion broke apart the earth. Rubble went flying as the dust gave Naruto and Orochimaru cover. Damn, I wasted two uses of Hifushin just now and didn't get any. Any what? Naruto blinked a few times and shook his head as he squinted, trying to see through the dust. 3 uses of Hifushin and he was already feeling its special brand of consequences. Slapping his hand against his cheek, Naruto tried clearing the haze in his mind. He couldn't let himself lose it. Not just yet. Refocusing, Naruto looked around before gritting his teeth. He had to use another one. In a flash of white, he was gone, appearing behind Orochimaru, whom was mere feet away from his previous position. Chains shot out of his back and flew towards the treacherous snake. Orochimaru spun around, performed some hand signs, and exhaled a stream of steady fire Naruto's way. The chain tore through with ease, and as Orochimaru went to bat them away, Naruto vanished once more, appearing just in front of the sun. Naruto's hand shot out towards Orochimaru's face, flattened out like a sword. Orochimaru tilted his head to avoid the blow, but Naruto's hand still grazed his cheek, drawing blood. Smiling briefly, Orochimaru opened his mouth, the sword of Kusanagi darting out. If not for the last second Kawirami he performed, Naruto was sure he would have died. Instead, a log met his end. To think there would still be a living practitioner of the Ryuchiko, chuckled Orochimaru as Naruto repositioned himself in front of his friends. I've not met someone who could perform such techniques since the Ondam's wife. Speaking of the late fourth, you resemble him quite closely now I see you. And your skills are so reminiscent of that couple. Curious. Naruto narrowed his eyes. Even though the worsening haze of his mind, he could tell that the dots Orochimaru was connecting would lead to nothing good. I definitely want you just as much as Sasuke could now. With the two of you, I could learn not only every ninjutsu, but every funjutsu as well. What a luck I have, smiled Isani. Now, unfortunately for Naruto, Orochimaru actually felt like going on attack, speeding through hand signs so quickly that Naruto couldn't even attempt keeping up. Orochimaru let loose his jutsu, Suiton, the Bakufu no Jutsu. From the Isani's mouth, an enormous amount of water escaped, rising into the air and casting a large foreboding shadow on the ground of the Genin below it. Naruto realized there would have no escape without him creating a shadow clone. He ordered to run off at full speed. Doing as instructed, the Bunshin hoped to clear the area of effects of the Orochimaru's jutsu. Right when the massive swell of water was about to crash down on Naruto, Naruto received his clone's memories, made sure his friends were all touching one another as he placed his hand on Kirin's shoulders and blinked away in a flash of white. A good distance away from the jutsu, the 4 of them appeared once more and watched it devastate the land. The water uprooted trees and carved out a hollow in the ground. It decimated everything it hit, and nothing but a scar in the earth remained of the man-made natural disaster. As this happened, Naruto was cradling his head in his hand, his mind racing yet thinking of nothing concrete. He reached his limit with Hifushin. 6 uses had already severely impaired his thoughts, 4th process, and if that wasn't bad enough, his latest use was just barely out of the range he was currently capable of. He couldn't afford to perform any more Hifushin. They would leave him in an unconscious heap on the ground. While the young Uzumaki was once again trying to order his thoughts, Orochimaru appeared before them once more, taking in their kneeling form, and they took off the pure exhaustion on Naruto's face. Orochimaru could tell that they had nothing else to resist him with. Naruto was finally down. Sasuke and Sakura weren't combat ready yet, and Kari's chakra was going to them. He'd won. With a smile, the Sanin began his approach, intent on collecting his prize. Naruto watched Orochimaru approach with fear running rampant through his mind. He couldn't force it away and fight any longer. He no longer had the mental strength. As a matter of fact, he didn't have the mental fortitude to keep something even more terrifying at bay either. Looks like it is my turn, Brad. And with those words, Naruto let loose an animalistic yell as he was engulfed in an impressive red chakra, the pillar of malevolence shooting into the sky. Link break. Minato felt it. Even from the Hokage office, he could feel the Kyuubi's chakra. He didn't need to look at Hiruzen's face to know he felt it too, but he could feel it on a completely different level. The half of the Kyuubi he had within him was reacting to the chakra, causing the Yondam some discomfort and forcing him to regain in his chakra lest he took begin to lose control. How are we going to explain this, I wonder, spoke Hiruzen, not truly asking a question. Believe me, by the time I get around to it, no one will be calling up for blood, and if they still do, well, I'll see to that personally. Minato replied as the door bursted open, revealing Hamura and Koharu. With a sign from both the Sandam and Yondam, they prepared themselves to put those two in their places for one last time. Link break. Fu was busy maintaining her lead on Gaara as she saw and felt massive spike of demonic chakra up her. She knew there was another Jinchuriki in the forest, but she wasn't expecting what she was feeling now. The pure hatred from the chakra was maddening. Fu, head towards that chakra. Chaume's direction almost made the poor girl run into the tree. What? No, I have enough issues with me right now. Don't you think? She wanted to not deal with it, and the Jinchuriki was crazed. That's what she felt about the situation anyway. Any normal person would feel the same. Trust me on this one, will you? Asked Jaume. I know exactly to whom the chakra belongs to. If you lead Shukaku there, I guarantee we'll have some help taking him down. Though she was immensely skeptical, Fu gave in with a sigh. She had yet to come up with any idea herself. Might as well roll with the punches, she thought as she increased her speed. She knew Gaara would continue to follow her, and even she sped up. Her intention was to buy enough time to convince the Jinchuriki up ahead to help her. Fu weaved through the trees. The chakra pressure from the earlier grew as she did so. As she drew nearer, she became more anxious about Chaume's plan. Now that she was closer, she could feel another chakra source tangled up with that of her fellow Jinchuriki. It was much controlled, but unfortunately not as potent. Maybe you're not so lucky after all, Chaume. Hey, you win some, you lose some. No? Definitely not what I want to hear out of your mouth in our situation right now. Fu could tell the Biju struck, and it pissed her off to no end. Do you have any shoulders? Details, more important, Fu. Pay attention. We're clearly close. And they were. Fu snapped back to reality and looked around as she weaved through a few more trees, and that's when she saw them. In a clearing up ahead were 5 people, 3 of which were kneeling on the ground, watching the fight between the 2 remaining occupants unfold. Speaking of the 2 remaining opponents, one was a pale man with a creepy smirk plastered across his face, and the other one was her fellow Jinchuriki, clad in a cloak of red chakra, reminiscent of a fox. Chaume had told her many things about his siblings over the years, so connecting the cloak to the Kyuubi was child's play. She watched over a moment as Naruto and Orochimaru did battle. The cloak Uzumaki leapt at the Sanin, his claws nearly swapping Orochimaru's face as he retaliated with a kick to the gut, and that was blocked by Naruto's chakra tail. Before Orochimaru could pull back, a blast of chakra from Naruto's mouth crashed into him, sending the Sanin skidding back as Naruto pressed his assault. Dashing forward, Fu could feel Chaume's need to help his skin, so she quickly made her way over to Naruto's companion. Are you with the pale guy or blondie? Fu inquired, startling Naruto's friend. The blonde. Sasuke responded, glaring at Fu. She was clad in a similar chakra cloak as Naruto, but that didn't mean much to him. She could still be a threat, and with the level of chakra he could feel from her, he knew she would be a very big one if she chose to be. What of it? Humming to herself, Fu nodded and turned away from them. Good. I'll go help him out then. Now that I know you guys won't try backstabbing me for it, or anything. That would suck it if that ever happened, you know. I prefer not killing you guys at all, especially if you're that injured. What fun is that? Where's the honor? Though I guess shinobi don't technically have honor. Fighting fair isn't our thing at all. Leave that to the samurai. Now, what I'm saying, so anyway, Fu rambling again. Oh, I was rambling, wasn't I? Thanks, Chaume. Anyway, the name's Fu. Now you guys sit tight while I'll go help your friend out. Time to do something dangerous. With that, her wings sprawled once more and she flew into the fray, leaving 3 very confused in a wake. What just happened? Sakura wondered aloud, her brow crouched in confusion. I have no idea, Karin replied. She offered to help Naruto and After that, it got really confusing. Who the hell is Chame? Karen asked as she watched Fu dart into the battle, blocking an incoming strike against Naruto from Orochimaru's fist as she spun at mid-air and nailed Isani in the face with a swift kick. Orochimaru, not expecting this sudden intrusion into his fight, stumbled back. Coming to a stop a few 2 feet away from the two Jinchurikis, he rubbed his cheek, and that right when Gaara entered the clearing, alarming everyone as he ran straight at Fu and Naruto. 3 Jinchurikis? My. Well, I believe I can use this to my advantage. Orochimaru smirked as Gaara flung sand shurikens at his fellow Jinchuriki, only for the two of them to dodge, followed by Naruto's chakra tail digging into the ground and appearing behind Gaara's moment later, smacking him in Orochimaru's direction as Fu flew towards them. Orochimaru prepared himself to swat her out of the sky, only for her to avoid engaging him or Gaara instead. She merely flew around the two of them, dodging when appropriate before backing off. Stopping a yard or two away from the snake and the crazy sand Jinchuriki, Fu flew through the hand signs and what Orochimaru noted as a weak fire jutsu before she fired it at them. He raised a brow, wondering what she could hope to accomplish as the crazy Ichibi Jinchuriki next to him ran towards the weak jutsu. Gaara did not get that far as Naruto's chakra tail had appeared from out of the ground again, tripping the mini Shikaku as he fell to the ground, kicking up a bit of dust. That's when Orochimaru noticed the luminous power and powder that had managed to elude his view until now. Fu's weak fire jutsu entered the outer layer of the powder and it immediately exploded, setting off a chain of explosions all around Orochimaru and Gaara. Rinpo Odoru. Following that jutsu, Fu performed a few more hand signs and exhaled more scale powder that shrouded the clearing. Hidon Rinpokagure no Jutsu. With a way to hide now in place, Fu grabbed a hold of Naruto, flew the boy out of the powder, sat him down, and then bumped fist with him before he could even hope to protest in anger state. Link break. Naruto's eyes shot open and he sat up quickly. Looking around, he found himself in a spacious room, the floor made out of stone and intricate designs etching into them. Groaning, he stood to his feet. As he did, someone spoke up to him. Good, you're awake. Spinning around, Naruto came face to face with Fu, the towering form of Chome at her back. What? Fu put a finger to his lips, stopping his outburst, and what she was sure would be a question. Shush, none of that now. Here's the short version for now. Now, name's Fu. You're the Cubist Jinchuriki and the Nanabist Jinchuriki. We bump fist, and with our Biju consent, we came here and entered this place, she said, gesturing to the space around them. The Biju meeting place? You were kind of running wild in the real world, so I was hoping to calm you down here. Didn't know you weren't on good terms with the Kyuubi though, so I won't really help, I guess. Naruto backed up, moving his lips away from Fu's fingers. Her fingers are soft, thought Naruto before he shook his head, attributing them to the mental exhaustion. But the Kyuubi hates me. Why would he allow this? Because it was the only way I'd be able to speak to one of my more pleasant kin, Brad. Rumbled the deep voice of the Kyuubi. Turning around, Naruto came face to face with the tenant without bars in the way for the first time. He had to admit the Kyuubi was far more intimidating outside the cell. Are you outside of the seal? Questioned a panicked Naruto before Fu put a hand on his shoulder. He's not. This place is just unaffected by the seals and its effects. Or it doesn't affect the seal, or something. Honestly, it's really complicated stuff that I don't get. The important thing is we're all here and we can talk. So let's cut to the chase. Fu commented. My Jinchuriki and I would like your assistance dealing with Shukaku. Kyuubi, in return we will assist you in your battle with the pale human, Chome stated. The Kyuubi merely stared at his kin for a moment before giving an exasperated growl and a simple nod for his head. He liked Chome when he wasn't rambling about his luck, and he was always up for putting that stupid Tanuki in his place, so why not? With a vicious smirk, the Kyuubi gave a more solid reply. You got a deal. Chome returned this with a nod of his own, and just as they were about to leave the realm they were in, Fu spoke up. Oh, Kyuubi, think you could actually work with Blondie over here? We're more likely to pull this off. He can use his skills along with yours instead of him just running wild. With a very audible growl, the Fu eyed Fu, then Chome, and finally Naruto before letting loose an annoyed huff. He would not like this. Fine. This one time I'll help the Brad out, just so I can get a shot at screwing with the Tanuki though. The Kyuubi snarled. Without holding his thoughts on the subject, Chome merely nodded once more, and then the four of them were back into the real world. Fu pulled her fist away from Naruto and the two stood. Naruto looked around and nodded his Now his vision was much sharper and he felt the power of the Kyuubi's chakra flowing through his veins. It was like the time he fought Haku, but more powerful and without the thought of clouding head rush. Truly, the Kyuubi was something else. You ready for this? Asked Fu as a Futon Jutsu blew away her scale powder. Within the realm they met with the Biju a few minutes had passed, but in reality, well, it had only been mere moments. Standing a few yards away from them was Orochimaru. His smirk was no longer there, but he didn't seem bothered by that. Taking Fu's Rinpo Odoro, and she knew he took the attack. His right sleeve was side. That made her wonder though. What had she gotten herself into if Orochimaru hadn't even been injured by her jutsu? Who is this guy? Fu asked Naruto, Orochimaru of the Sannin. He replied as he stood next to her, hunching over and letting all four of his limbs touch the ground, as Kyuubi gave him a small briefing on what he could currently do in this state. Already Naruto knew it, and would go well with Dakage Yoshigo techniques. What? She asked after a pause. Why would you even be fighting a guy like this? He attacked us. It was fighting or let him do whatever he wants. Not like we could run from a Sannin. Point. Well, enough chit-chat, said Fu as she rose into the air and looked towards Orochimaru again. That's when she realized something was off. Where is Gaara? Futon, Renkudon. From a tree branch just behind them, Gaara exhaled bullets of wind, intent on having them excoriate his fellow Jinchurikis. One for chains to free themselves from Naruto's back and block for himself and Fu. As the chain vanished back into Naruto's body, he and Fu took off. Naruto darted towards Gaara, like the Ichibi Jinchuriki's tail whipping around as he spun to intercept. Naruto threw his arms out, the cloak around him flying towards and forward and crashing with Gaara's tail before Naruto grabbed it and pulled. Gaara flew through the air towards the young Uzumaki as Naruto let go of his tail, flipping over the crazed boy and nailing him with his chakra tail. Gaara flew further through the air, right towards Fu, who was attempting to trade swift blows with Orochimaru and failed. As Naruto landed on the branch Gaara had attacked them from. The Sannin may not have had the high grounds right now, but he was fast. Orochimaru's next extended and flanked her as the sword of Kusanagi once again freed itself from the Sannin's throat. While he was already beginning the motions of a horizontal slash, Fu tilted her whole body back, flying backwards and passing beneath both the blade and Gaara, who was a few inches above Orochimaru's blade. As she flew, she spun around rapidly, creating a storm of scale powder around her that she shot towards the two of them with a very powerful flap of her wings. Both Orochimaru and Gaara, who had already regained his footing a moment ago, dodged out of the powdered path. Neither of them was too keen on being caught up in that again. "Know any Katon Jutsu?" Fu asked, startling Naruto as he heard the question seemingly within his own mind. He hadn't seen her move her lips, choosing to ask later. He just cooperated now. He replied, "Just one." He smirked, already knowing, understanding what Fu wanted. Though the two of them had never worked together before, the two tenants had and were guiding their Jinchurikis on how to best work with one another. Katon was Senko no Jutsu. Naruto spewed 7 fireballs out of his mouth, controlling them with his chakra and leading them into Fu's scale powder. Naruto wasn't too good with Katon Jutsu yet, and his Hosoken no Jutsu wasn't a very strong Katon Jutsu in the first place, but it didn't need to be. Making contact with the Fu powder would turn those small fireballs into a massive explosions. Understanding this, though not intending to work together, both Orochimaru and the crazed Suna Jinchuriki performed their jutsu in retaliation. As Naruto's fireball hit Fu powder, the explosion was met with the Daibakufu, one of side, and Mugen Sajin Daiboda on the other side. The force of the explosion was contained and would have been overpowered if not for Naruto's newly created clone throwing him into the air, where he focused the Kyuubi's chakra before expelling it from his mouth in a powerful blast of raw energy. The chakra slammed into the clash of jutsu below, resulting in an explosion that knocked the 4 battling shinobi away, all while the remaining members of Team 7 and Karin watched on. Sakura shielded her eyes as the explosion carried dust and water through the air, only one thought passing through her mind. "They're like monsters." All was quiet in the clearing as Sasuke, Sakura, and Karin waited for the smoke to clear with bated breaths. They hoped that Naruto and the Takanin would come out to help them, would be the ones who could become victorious, but they couldn't be sure. Though the exchange between the 4 of them had been brief, they could tell that they only described as a sand monster was strong, and the already known Orochimaru was one of the many stronger crazy shinobis who was known as one-man army. "Do you think we've won?" worried Karin as she rubbed at the bite marks on her arms. Sasuke and Sakura hadn't attracted her chakra for long, but she felt a bit drained, and being bitten was never her pleasurable feeling for her. There's no telling, Sasuke replied as he gritted his teeth, watching the smoke clear. He couldn't believe what he just was seen. This kind of power that had just been dangling in front of his eyes like a cat toy was beyond frustrating. He wanted, no, needed this power. The young Uchiha couldn't understand how his blonde dunes of a teammate had gotten so strong, but he would find out. While Sasuke was mildly distracted with his thoughts, Sakura and Karin were squinting to attempt making something out there through the dust, and after a moment they did. Standing amongst the wet earth, the blow-away trees, and a few small fires was a lone figure. Karin brought her hands to her mouth, a grasp of horror ghosting past her lips and fingers of a moment. No, breathing Sakura. She could feel herself trembling away. No. There, standing amongst the carnage, was a lone figure, and the 3 feet were the 3 bodies unconscious. As Sakura screamed, the lone victor of the battle smirked darkly. Relatively unscratched, Orochimaru was the last man standing. Link break. Naruto opened his eyes with the ground as he tried sitting up. His whole body ached in protest, causing him to wince in pain, but he managed to support himself with his arms. He felt weak. His mind was still kind of hazy, though he figured this could be from the sleeping since it wasn't as bad as it was during the fight. He felt completely drained in general. Doing his best to ignore the condition, he looked around, finding himself with a cozy room containing 3 other beds aside from his own. A single door across the room from the bed and a window at his neck. Instantly, Naruto was on alert. He knew there wasn't where he had lost his conscience, obviously. It wasn't nearly destroyed enough, and there was a distinct lack of trees. Where am I? He wondered aloud, the door of the room opening a moment later. He tried to prepare himself for whoever would come through, but he was too drained to really do anything more than awkwardly attempt lifting himself further up. Thankfully for him, he didn't need to be prepared. Karin walked up into the room, blinking a few times as she saw him. Waking and sitting up, smiling, she walked over, and her pace quick and almost frantic. Before Naruto could say anything, she engulfed him into a hug, mumbling into his neck and about how happy she was that he'd woken up. What happened? Asked the blonde. I remember the explosion and then nothing. As for, are Sakura and Sasuke okay? Are you... And what about Orochimaru? What happened? And Kara? And is Fu okay? She was helping us, Karin. I hope nothing bad happened. Naruto panicked. Rambling was brought to an end, but Karin covering his mouth with her hands. Calm down, Naruto. I'm okay. We're all okay. After the big explosion, Orochimaru was the last man standing. He would have succeeded in carrying out his plans if not for the group of Anbu and your mother showing up. Deciding to cut his losses, he left. The mint-haired girl, Fu, he called her. Another Takinin showed up and retrieved her. I assume it was her teammate. As for the red-haired boy who had been that sand thing, well, 2 other Sunanins picked him up as well. I see. Naruto breathed, weakly running a hand through his hair as he lay back down. I'm so glad. I thought we were screwed for a moment there. Karin nodded in understanding, her eyes softening. How do you feel? Really tired. I really overdid it. And that was before the whole chakra cloak thing. Yeah, about that. Karin said, you got a lot of explaining to do. The Hokage seems to want to hear what you have to say as well. Your team hasn't even been called in for debriefing yet. Apparently they were waiting for you to get back on your feet. I should have go tell them now you're awake, but Karin trailed off here, looking over her kin with a bit of worry. Get a bit more rest until I get back. Okay? You need it. Rising from her sitting position on the bed, Karin smoothed out her skirt and made her way to the door while Naruto grunted out an okay and closed his eyes. More sleep sounded really good to him right now. As this is where I'm going to be leaving this part of, guys. I hope you like this one, and if you do, please leave a like and subscribe to my channel if you like the content of this channel. And don't worry, new series will be coming to this channel soon, and new movies as well, and short movies as well. So yeah, don't worry about this. I have taken your suggestion in recommendations, and I will be working on them as well, and my ideas as well. So yeah, just wait for a bit, okay? That's all I ask. Anyway, this is Apollo Uchiha, and I'm signing out.